Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the MCM London Comic-Con. How are you doing? Come on, guys. How are you doing? It's final time. 2 days of arguably epic action in the Hearthstone world have taken place right here, and it's all led to this one moment. We are about to see Boar Control go up against Cipher, and they're going to duke it out to see who is crowned the champion of the ESL UK Premier and gets their hand on this fantastic trophy. That's coming right up. The crowd has been electric throughout. I know people like to support. We always hear that. So if you want to get your hands on awesome swag like this, you can head over to shop.esl.com, and there you can pick up, shop.eslgaming.com, where you can pick up this kind of swag. Now, who wants a t-shirt in the audience? Come on, guys, I'm a trifle deaf. Who wants a t-shirt in the audience? I knew you were out there. Okay, so I tell you what, if somebody can answer who was the first of our champions to leave yesterday, who knows who that was? You're disqualified, sir. I can see that you're a part of it. Not him. Anybody else? Come on, put your hands up. Who's got the answer? Go. There. This man right here. Good, sir. A round of applause for this man, ladies and gentlemen. There you go. There you go. Now, of course, we also have another fantastic competition by the good people of Intel, and to take part could not be easier. All you need to do is find yourself a picture of somebody taking part in cosplay here at the Comic-Con, and you can send that to the ESL UK Twitter handle, @ESLUK, and use the hashtag ESL Intel, and you get a chance to get your hand on that fabulous gaming hardware, this iPad gaming hardware powered by Intel. Really tasty, tasty stuff. But it's time for the main event. Are you guys ready? Are you guys ready? They are indeed, which means it's time to go over to my brother-in-arms, the man, the myth, the legend, the one and only. It is Lord Joseph Fenny.
Thank you very much, Sean. And we are here. We are finally ready to jump into our potentially last series of the day, because we have Boar Control up against Cipher once more. Now, this is a series we have already seen. And actually, we might end up having a best of 3 between these two in terms of actual matches, because the way this final works, the way it's been double elimination, because Cipher has come from the winner's bracket. In fact, speaking of the brackets, let's bring them up on your screen so I can actually talk you through them. But because Cipher has had an undefeated streak through the winner's bracket, it means that he is now weighted in our final, and we could end up with 2 best of 7s in a row between Cipher and Boar Control. If Boar Control is able to take the victory in this first game against Cipher, it means that he will push this through into a second best of 7. So all in all, across this double elimination, they'll essentially have a best of 3 of best of 7s, which would be pretty balmy, to be quite honest. But I mean, what do you guys reckon about this series coming up right now?
I mean, 14 games of Hearthstone, I'm up for that. Like, I think the whole crowd would be up for that. I think Boar Control's got a lot to prove now. He didn't have the greatest series, but a lot of things didn't go his way. I spoke to him backstage, and he said the Flame Jugglers just didn't go right, the Knife Jugglers didn't go right, but he's playing decks that has that kind of element of randomness, so he's got to expect it every now and then. Things kind of favored him when he was playing Mysterious, and now he just needs to kind of put all the series behind him and go into this one with a nice, fresh, clean face.
The interesting thing about Boar Control's...
We'll go slate face.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, I said inches and minutes, right? So the interesting thing about Boar Control's lineup is that it's very aggressive, and it's some of his, especially 2 of his decks, the Beast Druid and the Face Shaman, are super draw dependent in the sense that you realistically want to get the ball snowballing within the first 4 turns, and then you need the card draw to back up your ability to search for lethal, or at least, you know, run the game in your favor. Cipher has just brought a lineup of solid decks. I mean, Soto and me were talking about it quite a lot throughout the course of this weekend, and we just said, you know, Cipher's not there's no spanners in the works, there's nothing surprising, it's just good stuff. Like, he's just brought stuff that can win on its day. Doesn't necessarily require draws. A lot of it is more play dependent. And that's why Cipher's been seeing a lot of success. I think his lineup is the best of the lineups we've got here. But if given the right set of circumstances, Ball Control can win.
I would love to see Ball Control just use that Druid straight off as well, because we didn't see it in the last series between these two. So I'd like him to use it as like a surprise element.
Absolutely. Well, the players are ready to get on into this grand final. So we'll see what decks they're going to start with. But first, let's get them onto stage. Sean Charles is standing by to introduce them one final time.
Yes, indeed. It is time to bring out our two gladiators, the guys that are going to duke it out right here. It all comes down to this moment. It's time to pick up this trophy. These two guys have done a fantastic job all weekend long. They've proved that they are worthy to be here and play in your final. Are you guys ready to meet them? Come on, guys. Are you ready to meet them? We've heard about his casino exploits. We know he slept in a haunted castle. He is a fantastic competitor. Everybody's loved him throughout. Put your hands together, show some love, make some noise. It's Boar Control! We get to chat a lot up here. I'm beginning to enjoy it. There's a good rapport. How are you feeling? You seem calm.
So yeah, I played a little Hearthstone today. I think I'm prepared.
Now, Cipher, no slouch. This guy's got game. How are you feeling? How are you preparing to go into the finals?
Yeah, clearly Cypher's a tough opponent after I lost him in the previous round. I have to beat him twice this time due to the format, so it's going to be really, really hard. Hopefully I could get some good matchups, play really well, and make it all the way.
We do indeed hope. Stay right here. We are going to get him out. He is the man who's played phenomenally throughout. Please, Comic-Con, make some noise, show some love. It's Cipher! Here we stand, potentially, on the bench of victory. What's going through your mind?
I'm feeling pretty good.
A man of few words. Always a good interview. How have you prepared thinking that Boar Control is standing in your way to becoming the champion today?
I told him day one when we got here, I expect to meet you in the finals, and here we are. So he's been weighed, he's been measured, and I'm going to find him wanting.
Fighting words. I will let you retort to that.
I came here to explore Comic-Con and win Hearthstone. I'm done exploring Comic-Con.
Oh. Ladies and gentlemen, I can promise this will be the matchup that you wanted. Cipher predicted it was going to happen. You guys have wanted it. Boar Control is ready. Cipher, you're ready. Guys, shake hands, please. The best of luck to you both. Please take your seats and get ready. And one more time, a big round of applause for our two finalists. The bad mouthing is done, the excitement is ready, this audience is ready, the stage is set, the trophy is here. It can mean only one thing. It's time for me to hand over to the wonderful, the illustrious, the master himself. It is Lord Joe Fenney.
Thank you very much once again, Sean. And some interesting words coming out from both of these players. I'm loving the fighting talk that we're finally starting to see come out. I love Boar Control's response there. Done exploring Comic-Con, only got winning Hearthstone to do.
I've been around at a lot of UK Premiership events, and that's got to be some of the best banter I've had between competitors. It was well thought out. It was, it had some sort of literature backing with ciphers, and Boar Control definitely threw a nice little retort in there. So these guys are friends, though. They've been friends for ages.
It was genuine as well, Boar Controls. I don't think that was planned. That was on the spot, so I was impressed.
Yeah, that was some on-the-spot thinking there from Boar Control. Hopefully he has enough of that during his games today, because might need it against Cipher's lineup.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether the fighting talk is going to help too much. Obviously, just need to let the cards do the talking, but. Yeah. I think Boar Control going into this, he can now just forget about that last game. He just needs to change maybe his deck selection. Obviously, in the last series, he lost 4-1, and perhaps his deck choices weren't right in the order that he picked them. So I'd like to see him bring something new to the table, as Cipher hasn't actually seen that Druid yet.
Yeah, I think you know, we looked at the last matchup between Ball Control and Mysterious, and he just had a good lineup versus Mysterious's. But we have seen from the way that the last series played out that is reversed in this case with Cipher and Ball Control. I think the Druid definitely needs to get a win, and I think if it does, it will put Ball Control in a good footing, because that Hunter deck, if it comes through and it doesn't get banned away, it's a pretty good deck. And actually, speaking of that, it is his Warrior that seems to have been banned. So he's going to have the Hunter deck to play with, and it has found wins in some of the more difficult situations. And obviously versus Freeze Mage, we saw it, even despite a horrendous start, it is still just a Hunter versus a Freeze Mage, and especially a mid-range Hunter versus a Freeze Mage, so can still win that matchup.
So these are the same bans that we saw in the previous match between these two. Clearly, they don't want to play those decks, so they're not changing their mind about the bans, which is interesting. But I guess Ball Control saying, look, I just really don't want to play against Zoo.
Yeah, and I mean, we heard from Ball Control on his kind of winners interview, just off the back of beating Mysterious. He said, you know, I've already done my prep for Cipher. I've already played against him. I know what his decks are. I know what my strategy is coming into here. And you can see he is going to be keeping that the same in banning out that Zoo Warlock. And I've got to say, there's a whole lot of respect being shown to Ball Control's tempo/mid-range, whatever you want to call it, Warrior. Like, I think he's played it like maybe 1, possibly 2 series. Every other time it's been banned away from him. And I can't say I blame these players. I wouldn't want to go against the creator of the deck either.
Yeah, I mean, he popularized that deck in the European scene. I mean, he's got that, online deck list that people have been copying from him. He's been updating it. He's given a guide for it. I mean, if anyone's going to play the tempo/mid-range Warrior deck to its best, it's the guy that has, spent so much time invested in making it popular. So I completely agree with banning it away. Yes, the Hunter deck is kind of a curveball when it comes to this tournament, but I think Cipher has dealt with it once. I think he feels pretty confident dealing with it again.
Well, it does look like Ball Control is going to queue in the Druid for game 1, which is what I said he needed to do just to kind of get that surprise element, maybe try and get a win on the board. Looks like he is going to toss everything away, though. I mean,
yeah.
When you don't have the coin, I can understand tossing all of this away. I would have maybe argued for keeping Fandral if you had a coin, just because you can get something crazy like innovate Fandral, like into Raven Idol, and it just becomes, it's really good.
So Sottle said that the 2 plays that you make with this deck that win you the game is Innovate Coin Fandral, or you go Druid of the Saber into Mark of Yashaj. So there are like 2 plays that can almost automatically win you the game. I like getting rid of Raven Idol, even if it's a turn 1 play. It's too slow, especially versus the Shaman. You need to be a little bit more proactive as the Beast Druid.
Yeah, this is a very fast, very aggressive deck, and you don't really want to waste turn 1 like that. You want to be on that front foot, forcing your opponent to react to you rather than the other way around. But obviously, it's going to be against this... I was going to say very aggressive Shaman. If I remember correctly, Cypher's running more of a mid-range Shaman with the double Lightning Storm in it as well. So, and speaking of, he does draw one of those Lightning Storms to start. Not the greatest ever starting hand for the Shaman, though. Obviously, you don't want to really use that Eternal Sentinel just bare like that.
Neither for the Druid, though. He's not looking in a particularly good state either. Obviously, Druid of the Flame into Mark of Yashaj is great, but that's turn 3 into turn 4. Realistically, you want turn 2 into turn 3.
I like what Ball Control's doing here as well. He's kind of hovering over that card to see, like, oh, I could play this card.
It's mind games. It's the final,
bluff
right?
out his opponent a little bit, which is good. I like to see people using their tools that are put in front of them to try and like get an advantage over their opponent.
So what card do you think he's trying to tell Cipher that is? Is it my Innovate? Am I going to go for an Innovate play here? Is it maybe Raven Idol?
It's bluffing that it's Living Roots, surely. That would be the standard turn 1 play that you could see out of a Druid.
I don't know, but if you had Living Roots, you'd probably play it. I don't know if it would be a bluff. I think he's very clearly trying to bluff Innovate here to say, oh, I could be innovating out. Maybe I'll keep it, just to kind of keep Cipher on the back foot, as he will now play that Living Roots, which he did get off the top. Just summon 2 of those 1/1 saplings, which makes the board a little bit awkward for Cipher, but Tunnel Trog off the top is quite nice.
Yeah, not too bad. Obviously, we know that Ball Control has got an answer. It's going to be the Tuskar Totemic here. Going to RNG its way to a Wrath of Air Totem, which actually isn't awful. It's not one of the worst ones you can get, especially with Lightning Storm in hand. It does beg the question that Ball Control now has to make the decision between trading into Tuskar Totemic or getting rid of that Wrath of Air Totem. So I guess it offers a question here for Ball Control, which I guess is more than you could have got from maybe a Searing Totem.
So he kind of took a deep breath there, because he's got a decision. Does he play this during the firing, and then he just like innovates Mark of I can't even say that word.
Mark of Visage.
Mark of Visage, and then automatically gets the card draw, or does he innovate out the Tiger? I mean, personally, I think I prefer the 3 into the 2, just to
Yeah.
get extra card draw, have that board presence as well.
I think that's fine, absolutely. And also you end up with a similar power on board with that as well, with a little bit more health to go behind it. It'll be a 4/7, right, I think, with Mark of Visage, and you get the card draw with it. It just feels stronger than the Tiger in this scenario.
One thing you do have to worry about, though, is, of course, there is only 2 hexes in this version of the deck from Cipher, so I kind of like playing the Tiger just for the sake of having that stealth, because it means that there is no immediate play that could come out from Cipher to punish this.
And this is the question that I told you that the Wrath of Air totem threw up to Boar Control. He says, do you respect the fact that there could be a lightning storm, or do you deal with this 3 power on board immediately and obviously losing your power? The way this works out is kind of more of the value trade here. You deal with the Wrath of Air, you stop any potential lightning storm shenanigans, and now Cipher's in the position where he either trades down into a 1/1 or just goes face, which makes it a little bit harder for him to make that kind of decision.
I think if he didn't have the Savage Roar in hand, I would have said, you just trade with that Tuskar Totemic, because you just get rid of that 3/2, but the fact he can get value out of one of these 1/1s is very likely, and just having that Savage Roar there as a backup is quite nice.
I think you trade into a 1/1 now that the Snakebite totem's come down, because you don't want to allow that 5/5, to just storm through and do what it wants. So this makes it a little bit more difficult. But Mark of Visage could be good here, but then also as good Violet Teacher. If you do Mark of Visage, you can hero power down the Snakebite totem and use your singular sapling, and then obviously I think every day of the week you'd throw that 7 damage to face, but then obviously, like Munch said, you have to be wary of the hex.
Yeah, I think when you're running an aggressive when you're running an aggressive deck like the Beast Druid, I would say just getting the damage to face while you can is quite valuable, because there is a lot of charge. Obviously, you've got your swipes in there as well. It could, that 7 damage could actually be a long way toward your victory, because quite often with this style of deck, you find yourself later on in the game with them on around 10 HP, you just don't quite have the reach to finish them off, so it really could make the difference. But it looks like the Violet Teacher is going to be the decision here, leaving that Tunnel Trog on the board, but there is a Totem Golem been drawn.
That feels fine, because obviously you know that 5 health is pretty solid versus the Shaman. They can't, even with the Wrath of Air totem, get that down particularly easily. So you're keeping yourself out of Lightning Storm range. If you force him to use a Rock Biter, you aren't going to be able to deal with it immediately on board, obviously. Even if you use your face, you've only got 4 damage threatening there. So there is a specific set of combinations that you need to at least deal with just one of these minions. And then following this, you do have Mark of Visage that will start to build up the Acolytes. So it's not looking too bad. Obviously, you can deal with one of them by using Lightning Storm because of the overload. But
well, with the Rock Biter weapon as well, you'd be able to use
depends
the
on
other
the
one
roll.
using face. So
Both rolling the 3 as well, which I mean, obviously doesn't make too much of a difference, but it's always nice to get the 3 over the 2. But that's the exact play I would have gone for personally. Just being able to clear that. This Beast Druid just can kind of snowball out of control, and I think just clearing board is extremely important.
It's a pretty good draw.
As another Tiger comes off the top for board control, and that seems like a solid play on turn 5 to me.
Yep.
yeah.
No, I was literally just concurring with the solid play, to be honest, because obviously having the stealth there, and it's the point you made earlier, Munch, was having a stealth there does keep it safe from something like a hex, whereas playing the Druid of the Flame with the Mark of Visage, yes, you get a powerful 4/7 on board, but you do become vulnerable to a hex, kind of swings the tempo away here, so I just like dropping the Tiger.
I think generally as well, with the Mark, you want to be playing that when you guarantee getting that extra 2 damage. You want to be able to get the maximum value out of that card, and especially playing into something like a Hex. It's risky to play it on the turn that you don't get to attack with, but Fire Elemental is going to be the draw for Cipher, so that's a good option for next turn on the grounds that he's not overloaded.
It's still an awkward turn though.
yeah,
You could play the Eternal and then play another 2-drop, but then you overload yourself again if you play the Totem Golem, meaning you can't play that Fire Elemental the following turn, so you'd have to use the Flame Tongue Totem, which would just die for free. You don't really know what's in the hand of Ball Control, so maybe even just rolling a Totem here.
He's going to go for it though, so maybe thinking about Thing from below.
Yeah, you've got the Thing
for
from
next
below.
turn.
I mean, the Fire Elemental is not necessary because there's nothing it can trade well into with the 3 damage from the Battle Cry, so I can understand that you're not too worried about the overload.
I mean, the only thing you'd want to trade that into is if he dropped Fandral maybe, or if he dropped a Raptor, those kind of things, the smaller minions that Druids can have. It just means, if Boar Control chooses not to trade into your Eternal Sentinel, then obviously you have more of a potential to deal 6 damage straight off the bat. So innovate here. I think I just expect to see the Druid, the Flame Mark of Ishaz, see what I draw type thing coming through here.
That is going to be the decision here. Mark going to be cast on the Druid, so not opting to go for that extra 2 damage, opting to just have 2 relatively similar power minions on board. That way, if there is something like a Hex to deal with them, you don't have all of your threat kind of dealt with in one fell swoop.
Doomhammer's not bad here. He deals with the Tiger. Unfortunately, doesn't deal with anything else. And also, it means that Fire Elemental still can't come down next turn. I think this is an issue for Cipher, because obviously he would have liked Fire Elemental this turn, because it would have dealt with the Tiger quite nicely.
He could just roll it over, play the Flame Tongue, and then think from below, which seems the most efficient use of mana. But it's a scary looking board from the Druid, but I mean the Druid is running out of cards, which is something that does happen with this Beast Druid so often. And Cipher will be looking at that one card and thinking, right, okay, so he's not played that for 5-6 turns. It probably is a Savage Roar.
Yeah, at least at the very least you know it's a situational card here. And I really like this as well, playing the Flame Tongue Totem, because it means that even if he has that Savage Roar to trade the Druid of the Flame in, he loses it on board, and it's probably the only minion that's providing him with some sort of presence. Power of the Wild's great, but it still puts it down to 1 health if you want to trade in.
Instead, it looks like he's going to use Savage Roar, probably use the Stealth to take down the 7/5.
Yeah.
And it does mean he can just clear the Flame Tongue Totem with his face, and then use 6 damage, jam it into that Shaman face.
Yeah, and obviously going for the 3/2 on board with Power of the Wild is great as well, so gets him just that replacement board presence. And there's nothing that Cipher can do immediately here, except for just drop the Fire Elemental.
A consistent theme throughout this game has been Cipher's turns have all felt very clunky. He's not really had nice plays that use his mana efficiently, and he's always kind of had to end up overloading himself for the future turns. It's all felt a little bit awkward for him, but Wrath is certainly going to make the day here for Boar Control, as he can knock down that Fire Elemental to 4. Doesn't choose to trade in though, just opts to go for more face damage here.
He has to go face now. He's got no cards left, and he knows he's on the back foot here because Cipher has 3 cards now, and like just being able to drop a 7/7 on the board is going to be pretty strong. But he could obviously opt to use his Doomhammer.
Yeah, I think if I were in his position, I'd drop the Flame Tongue and Doomhammer, because you trade.
You can't do both. The Flame Tongue Doomhammer.
Yeah, the Flame Tongue and Doomhammer, because that means you trade the Fire Elemental in, you trade the Healing Totem in, and then your Doomhammer usually clears up whatever 1-drop comes out of the Raptor, and then obviously you've got at least some form of board presence that you can maintain, and then the Druid is literally just relying on top decks. And I think Boar Control runs 0 nourishes in this Beast Druid deck, so there's nothing that's going to bail him out in terms of huge amounts of card draw.
It's not like the Druid of old where they can just get that Force of Nature and then hold it and get Savage Roar. It's once you're behind and you're not drawing stuff, you're probably going to lose, and that is why this Beast Druid is not favoured by a lot of players at the moment. And it's actually what Cipher said to Boar Control yesterday. He said, look, I just don't like your Druid, plain and simple.
So he goes for the Flame Wreath instead, which is absolutely fine.
I like this as well, because like realistically, anything Boar Control gets that would, in theory, be able to deal with the Flame Wreath, like looking at things like Swipe, these big spells, he can't afford to use them on the Flame Wreath anyway. He needs to get that damage on face. That's his only win condition at this stage. So I like just dropping that in a Lightning Storm. It's definitely a powerful draw. Doesn't really need to use that at this stage, though. It is just going to continue to trade in and continue to consistently maintain this Boar Control.
I mean, I'm trying to think of what Boar Control's outs are. I mean, Cipher knows, like, Boar Control's on such a back foot now. There's nothing he can draw that can get back into this game. I mean, Swipes, he's got 2 left still. I mean, even then, there's just not enough damage for him. He's going to have to go into the charge here. And he's just trying to put as much damage onto face. He's just trying to think, how much spell damage have I got left in this deck? How many charge minions have I got? Because realistically, I'm struggling right now.
If you think, well, I mean, that's a great draw as well, but if you think about it, if he's not used a Swipe yet, if Cipher uses his face to trade in here, then somehow Boar Control lives enough to draw double swipe living roots, then there's the potential to win. But, you know, realistically, with that, you might as well just use Lightning Storm here, because essentially you're now on a 2-turn timer. You don't even give Boar Control the time of day to be able to draw those cards, because Boar Control effectively needs 3 draws there, and we know that the only form of card draw he runs in his deck is Mark of Visage, I believe. There's the living roots. It just needs 2 more swipes.
Hey, let's put him down to 11.
And actually, obviously didn't use his face to trade in anyway, so that just removes that complete.
We wouldn't have had time to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway,
You wouldn't have time to do it anyway, but you know, if there was that weird world situation where suddenly he was able to stall it enough to get 2 swipes and he used his face to trade, that was the only real way he could potentially look to win from that situation.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't. That is going to mean now that the Beast Druid's still yet to get a victory on the board in this series, but Cipher, he's got his Shaman deck out of the way, and we've seen a couple of times across today the Shaman deck's not really having the right effect and kind of struggling to get the wins on the board. So I think Cypher's going to be quite happy to have gotten that deck out of the way early. Yeah,
Cypher's, I think, one of the only ones who brought the mid-range Shaman deck, whereas we've just seen a lot of face Shaman, especially from Boar Control. I think, in general, the mid-range Shaman is more consistent.
Well, I think versus Leroy yesterday, I believe both of his losses, I think Leroy beat Cypher Shaman twice.
Yeah,
I think that was the only deck they actually lost to Leroy on.
If there was one deck that had a slight weakness, it was Cypher's mid-range Shaman. I believe you're completely correct in the sense the only time we have seen Cipher lost has been when he's been using that mid-range Shaman. So to get it out the way now must feel pretty good, because he knows that the rest of his lineup he has had pretty much 100% success rate with. And obviously he's kept that Beast Druid in play for Boar Control. Now, Boar Control has had success with it in the previous game versus Mysterious, especially versus the Freeze Mage. So maybe Cipher thinks if he's going to queue that up again, I queue Freeze Mage, and if I can get a win there, then I'm feeling excellent.
So arguably, it was 2 of their weakest decks. So it makes it even more important that Cipher was able to get that win, and even more so that there is the mind games that Cipher did say, look, okay, your Druid's not that great, I think I can beat it, and now Boar Control is going to have to queue it again at some point if he wants to win this series.
Yeah, and I think in general, the face Shaman does okay here against some of the lineup. I think especially versus Rogue and Freeze Mage, face Shaman will have an okay time there. So that's okay for Boar Control, but I do think that Beast Druid is going to struggle in some respects. He's going to go for the Hunter, and it's going to be going up against the Miracle Rogue here for Cipher.
Right, let's see if Boar Control can keep a camel.
I was going to say, I always feel like it's risky to mulligan here, just because you've had so much bad luck getting your injured Cavaldiers in your hand to start with, but he does have the camel this time, so fingers crossed for Boar Control, he will actually be able to use that to its effect.
He's not been able to get any real value out of that camel all weekend, really.
He's thinking about keeping Stranglethorn here, because if you drop it turn 5, then you can hopefully deal with a Gadget Sound that doesn't get concealed. So he's really thinking in this matchup how, you know, what tools am I going to have to deal with the Gadget Sound Auctioneer, and is a turn 5 Stranglethorn Tiger going to be that tool?
I could never imagine of keeping a 5-drop.
No, he was thinking about it just in that sense. But
there's one.
His face as well. I think he's got plenty of other tools in the deck to deal with gadgets, and especially double Deadly Shot is going to be incredibly important in this scenario.
And I think as well, drawing the 1 injured Cavaldier isn't too bad. It's not the end of the world, because you still can get some value out of the camel at least. It's just over his next couple of draws when he gets his other injured Cavaldiers and his Fiery Bats, like we've seen in the previous games, that's when it's really going to be an issue. But could possibly see the coin camel here. There's not, I mean, the next turn you can even go into your weapon as well, so there's a decent curve following it.
I think the coin camel's better in this scenario, because what you're going to do if you coin...
Yeah, that's what I mean, and then follow the next turn with the
And also, you want to reduce the risk of drawing another one of those 1-drops, because, I mean, Boar Control's luck's not been great with drawing these 1-drops. He did win that game where he had all 4 1-drops in his, opening hand, but, yeah, I think coin into camel is here now, and he's going to obviously be hoping he doesn't draw the Fiery Bat out of this, but knowing Boar Control, he probably will. There you go.
It's not awful drawing the Fiery Bat, it's just getting more power on board here.
I mean, the odds of Fiery Bat were obviously higher.
We can see that Cypher's immediately got an answer here. He's got Backstab SI7 Agent, which is almost like the perfect turn, is the perfect turn 3 turn for most Warlocks, so he's going to be able to deal with it. And Boar Control's face tells you everything you need to know about that play.
But he could have had a 2-4 on board. That's the difference.
Exactly, yeah.
And immediately, Fiery Bat has now been drawn, but is going to go for that Eagle Horn bow and clear the board once more, kind of resetting the game at this stage.
Tomb Pillager off the top.
Draw is going to be there for Cipher to just drop that Tomb Pillager, which, I mean, we see that turn 4. If it's available, that is the turn 4 for Miracle Rogue.
Deadly Shot's not awful here, you know, Deadly Shot and then use your Fiery Bat. I mean, when I say awful, it's like the only play you've got, but then do you want to save that Deadly Shot for the Gadgets and Auctioneer? That's the kind of question you have to ask. But if you leave this £5 minion on board, you're going to be taking a lot of damage to face already. I think Tomb Pillager is, you know, it's one of the best 4-drops you can physically get in the game. It's just so powerful for that amount of mana.
I think I like Deadly Shot here.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like anything else, so I think it's pretty much the only option.
Yeah,
here.
I don't like Hero Power Fiery Bat, so you know, it seems like it's the
But
best play.
that is a viable thing because, okay, you could just leave your weapon up and then you could trade into that Tomb Pillager next turn, providing that the Fiery Bat either trades into the Tomb Pillager or it's 1 damage hits the Tomb Pillager.
You're asking a big question of Boar Control here and whether his single damage flames can not hit face.
They always, they never go where he wants right
So
now. But
there is also the question of, would it ever be worth playing the Unleash the Hounds there and then using the weapons trade in? I mean, realistically, against a rogue, it's not often that you see a huge wide board or anything.
The only thing is, I think Cipher runs Violet Teacher in his rogue deck. So that's the only I think, from what I've seen previously, and keeping Unleash the Hounds when you know that the Violet Teacher is can be pretty influential. That would be the only hesitation I would have going forward. But looks like Cipher's still got plays to make every turn, and obviously has that sap ready for Savannah High Main as well. I guess Boar Control just slams Harrison if he doesn't draw anything good here.
yeah, I mean, you get 1 card draw, you put a 5/4 body on board, and you can use your weapon to trade into the Farseer. I think that's absolutely fine. You gain Boar Control out of it. Does draw into a King's Elect, and you've got the Camel as well. It's not looking too bad. There are a lot of spells in the hand of Cipher, which does mean he can make a giant Edwin.
Yeah, he can deal. He can deal with this Harrison with backstab and then hitting face.
I mean, it's a little bit awkward at this stage for Cipher that he still hasn't seen an Auctioneer just yet, still trying to build up a combo to use there. Does have the preparation in hand. Looks like the Van Cleef is going to be the decision on this turn. Do we know if Boar Control is running any Mark of the Wild in this? Hunter's Mark, sorry, not Mark of the Wild.
No, I don't think he runs Hunter's Mark in this deck list. No. The issue now for Boar Control is, do you bother slamming High Main and then you just get sapped and lose the game? Like that is the real question here. You really want to slam High Main on turn 6, but you know versus Rogue it can be incredibly weak. The other play is King's Elec and then Houndmaster, which doesn't feel as bad. Which I think is the play he's going to make just because the sap is there and you have to fear the sap from the rogue.
Yeah, I think Elec into Houndmaster is probably the play I would go for. I mean, alternatively, you could perhaps even Camel into Hounds if you really wanted to just get a bit more board presence, but even that doesn't feel right. Everything just feels a little bit clunky right now. And of course, like you say, you're worried about that sap. You're just banking on your opponent not having that sap. But I guess if you are making that assumption, would you just play the High Main? But
okay, he's going to go for the Desert Camel as well. So he's just going to say, okay, I'm going to.
Hey!
There we go. Finally, seen it from Boar Control. I like this play as well. This is pretty good. And the thing is, it's something that both Sottle and Raven said quite consistently in the last thing. He said, you can't play around everything. Like, eventually you have to say, I hope my opponent doesn't have this, and if they do have this, I lose.
Shadow Strike can deal with one of those 2/4s as well. I mean, personally, I'd love to just sap that injured back into the hand just to try and trigger Boar Control even more, but I'm not sure he'll want to waste a sap when he knows that something like a High Main could come in.
So Shadow Strike comes through. Obviously, 8 damage goes to face. He's going to conceal it too, so relying on Deadly Shot from the top here to be a saving grace for Boar Control.
Certainly is. And unfortunately as well, that injured Kvaldir, one of the issues of running this in a Hunter deck is obviously it isn't a beast, so Houndmaster not available for that one. And this is not the greatest of turns for Boar Control, really doesn't have a lot that's particularly mana efficient. None of this feels good to play on this turn. Obviously, still got the issue with Savannah High Main in that you're risking just being sapped again. You don't have the 8 mana to play the Wolf and the Houndmaster, so it's all just a little bit clunky here.
I think every turn Boar Control's had, I've winced, and I wouldn't want to be in his shoes because it just nothing feels right. Everything feels like it's going to lose you the game right
I think
now.
at some point you have to slam the high main. Like you
gotta
have
hedge
to
your
say,
bets.
do you have sap or not? If you've got sap, I lose the game. If you don't, then I'm in a good position. You can't continuously play around a card. He's going to try and do it though. Obviously, this feels pretty awful with the Houndmaster too, but it does stop that 8 damage from Edwin going to face, which is pretty decent.
Because you're worried about Cold Bloods as well at this point. Speak of the devil.
Speak of the devil.
There's one of them. How many times has that happened this weekend?
Quite a few, but I think one thing we've got to bear in mind that we've not really touched on is actually ball control has got Cipher incredibly low. Call of the Wild top deck here, if the board isn't cleared, could be lethal. Like, this is actually an issue for Cipher. He does have to deal with his opponent's board.
So he is just going to use the Cold Blood, get as much damage into face now while he can, and put him down to 3 health.
So this
If
Call of the Wild isn't
comes,
out. Is
it could be game.
Kill command doesn't work at the moment. You need to place another beast. You do have that Hound which has charged. Deadly Shot is really good though.
It certainly keeps him in the game.
It definitely does, but it's something like SI7 Agent off the top would obviously win him the game. But yeah, this is getting close. I mean, Cipher needs to draw something. Well, yeah, he definitely needs to draw something, otherwise he loses. So what are your outs here? SI7 Agent, Abyssal Ray, he's got 2 of left.
If you run a Deadly Poison.
Azure Drake gives you another chance.
Not what you need.
Tomb Pillager, which means after all of that, it felt like ball control was on the back foot for so long, but he manages to take that game over Cipher, and that means he finally has that Hunter win in the bag as well. So not going to have to rely on the camels, not going to be too worried about the injured Valdez anymore. I mean, what do you guys make of that game? Because it definitely felt like Cipher was ahead for a lot of that.
I think that the key point is, and we talked about it, and I talked about having to play around it eventually, that sap, but ball control played around it really nicely, using that Unleash the Hounds and that Houndmaster right there. It said to Cipher, okay, you've got this Edwin, you're not going to get through this taunt unless you have that sap, so if, obviously, he put him to very close to lethal anyway, but had the game been drawn out longer, that meant that Savannah Highmain could have come down and been more of a threat. So ball control just played around the sap really nicely, and I think at this point that you balance up between, do I know he's got it and do I not know he's got it? Well, that card was sat there for a very long time, and he's saying it's a situational card in that sense. Yeah. So he's saying, I'm pretty sure that's a sap. So I don't want to lose huge amounts of tempo by just dropping my 6-drop and then having it sap back into hand, and suddenly I'm in a losing position. So ball control played around it incredibly nicely, and eventually managed to take out the win, which was really, really well played. Obviously, Cipher had loads of outs. I'd say that Cipher probably had more outs than ball control, but yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, these are going to be the remaining decks here for this matchup. Ball control with the Druid, Warlock, and Shaman, and Cipher with the Mage, Rogue, and Warrior. Now, interesting that ball control did opt to ban away that Warlock instead of banning the Warrior. Do you think that could be something that really factors in this matchup, the fact that the Warrior is going to be available for Cipher?
Potentially. Obviously, ball control knows the strengths and weaknesses of the Tempo Warrior to the greatest extent. I think most people have said that banning Zoo is an okay method to go down because Zoo is just so good in so many matchups. It's going to be the face Shaman now coming out, and obviously Cipher going to rotate back onto that Miracle Rogue. But yeah, I think the Tempo Warrior ban, also the Tempo Warrior being left available, it is okay, especially since ball control, I think, knows that it's the Varian Rin version. So I guess he has a tactic. I mean, I couldn't possibly see into his potential theory crafting behind that, but if you leave that Warrior open, you've made the conscious decision to ban out a Zoo instead of the Tempo Warrior. You're going to have a plan of some sort when facing
he knows that deck inside out, right? So
yeah.
He knows what beats it, so why not leave it up? And he obviously, the decks that he's got aren't great against Zoo. I think it's perfectly fine to just ban Zoo. So Finley, as a 1-drop, always seems great, and probably looking for that Hunter hero power, especially as this is a face Shaman.
Yeah,
but sometimes the Warlock hero power is just as good.
You need to race in this situation. So Hunter and Warlock are tier 1, then you can take Druid as I guess a supplement to your Doomhammer. So there are several hero powers you'll be searching for here. But he hasn't had the best hero power selection, but obviously can't get bad ones all of the time. So hopefully he'll pick up one that he finds suiting this time around.
You say that, but actually you can get bad ones all of the time. Obviously, probability doesn't work on your previous result. So we'll see what he opts to go for here. I mean, you've got a pretty wide range of turn 1 plays here available. Would you just go straight for the Sir Finley here and look for a hero power?
Yeah, if I had Totem Golem in hand, I would consider Tunnel Trog, but otherwise I think Sir Finley's fine. You're not expecting to trade up into anything turn 2 against the Hunter Parrot straight away. You're not expected to trade up into anything on turn 2 from the Rogue, so you're probably not going to play Argent Squire given that you've got Flame Tongue in hand, so Sir Finley suits me absolutely fine.
I think you might just consider both of these 1-drops as well. Just because the Flame Tongue Totem just doesn't put as much presence on board as having 2 extra minions, and there's not much of an answer in the hand of Cipher right now. Okay, he could dagger up, coin into a Deadly Poison now to perhaps take down that Tunnel Trog, which seems like a viable play.
That's the play, I'd say. So it is confirmed he's got at least 1 Deadly Poison running in his deck. I know that most Miracle Rogues now run only 1 Deadly Poison and favour that card slot for something else. And this does mean that it'll give him the opportunity to, over 2 turns, take down Finley and Tunnel Trog as it stands, but we obviously see that Flame Tongue Totem in hand for ball control, so that gives him the option to take that down too. If I was Cipher, I would say that would be the play I would make, because at this point you are staring down a potential snowbally board and you want to get rid of some of the bigger threats.
I think he's just considering, I mean, Rogues always like to keep a coin. He's obviously got the potential for a very big Edwin in a following turn, but he may just dagger up and pass here, or just, run into the Argent Squire, because next turn he could obviously have the Edwin turn where he can use the preparation to then use the Deadly Poison and then use the Edwin.
You'd have been punished by Fell Rewards here, though. I think that would have been the punishing play for ball control on turn 3. Because it means you can't then deal with the Tunnel Trog particularly effectively unless you just, I guess, prep sap it.
I think this matchup is very difficult as Rogue. In my personal experience, when I played this matchup, I don't think I've won as Rogue. I think I've won probably 90% of the time as Shaman, but it does look like he's going to prep into something here, perhaps Shadow Strike.
Yeah, prep Shadow Strike, coin, Deadly Poison, Edwin.
Yeah, I think that's a solid play, and I guess you get rid of the Flame Tongue Totem rather than the Finley, but yeah.
10-10
That
Edwin.
is a terrifying Edwin Van Cleef right there, and ball control, he's going to have to pray for something good off the top of his deck right now, because that is a minion you do not want to be staring at for all too long. The Flame Juggler, not really going to be the answer that he's looking for.
That was why he saved the coin, right? I mean, he obviously saw it. That's a dream for a Rogue, just to be able to make an Edwin that big against such an aggro deck. Having Leroy Jenkins in hand as well is just so much potential for damage, and I guess Cypher's now just going to say, look, okay, do I just race him? Do I just jam 10 into face now?
I guess if he... Oh, that's a great draw as well.
Backstab as well.
I guess if you hadn't drawn Shadow Strike, the play would have been prep sap, and the same result would have happened. So he obviously saw that in the next turn. I was a little bit too quick to jump the gun. And he's going to have Shiv, backstab, and just deal so much damage to face here too.
There's even an Auctioneer going to be available. If he does go for Leroy on turn 5, you've then got something, an option available on turn 6 just to keep the ball rolling.
Do you use your sap here?
I think save it.
Sap
Like,
what?
you don't gain much from sapping either of those minions. Like, if he drops Frost Walls, you'd be able to sap one of those in a future turn. So I think daggering up gives you just more options right now.
Because I guess you could, like, potentially sap Sir Finley and say if you want to get rid of Hunter Hero Power, you can just play it again. But
I suppose in this situation, he might want to get rid of it, because at the moment it feels like he's on the back foot, and something like healing or the armor may
he's got
be better.
3, 5, 8 damage with the Rock Biter weapon there, so not enough to take down Edwin just yet, which doesn't feel great. And he's obviously on a 2-turn timer if he doesn't deal with it. So this is not looking particularly fantastic for ball control here. And a singular turn 3 swing play from Cipher potentially has secured him the game. We know that obviously this is a face Shaman deck, he won't run any forms of Hex. So the only option that ball control has is to try and race back. And I'm guessing the only draw that saves him next turn is Doomhammer.
He's used his Rock Biter weapon. So I'm trying to think.
Well, it depends. If Cipher chooses to go face, you've got things like Lava Burst.
Doomhammer is still lethal if he does draw it, assuming his entire board survives.
So obviously, Edwin goes face every time, and then it's just what you're going to do with the rest of the turn.
Shaman of Knives
Yeah.
removes the lethal from Doomhammer. Get an extra card as well.
You just sap the flame. I mean, why not just sap the
Flame Juggler.
flame juggler?
You've just got to get rid of damage at the moment. You've got to be thinking in your head, what can he draw to beat me? How much does he need? I think by getting rid of the Flame Juggler, that obviously leaves only 3 damage, puts him to 6. If the juggle off the top, no, he can't. Yeah, the juggle off the top could potentially hit face, plus Lava Burst would be lethal.
The only thing, I guess, that would... I mean, if he doesn't sap it, that would be lethal with Lava Burst anyway, right?
Yeah.
But, the only thing I guess he's thinking about is if Feral Spirits comes on, or Feral Wolves come down, I might need to sap one and hope I top deck something like an Eviscerate to get lethal.
Quite possibly. Well, the top deck for Boar Control is going to be an Argent Squire, which unfortunately for him is not going to be enough with that Hunter Hero power. There's no way he can take on the Van Cleef. That means we're now going to be 2-1 up for Cipher, taking a victory with that Miracle Rogue. Again, I've said this time and time again across the weekend. That Miracle Rogue, just such a consistently good deck, and finding yet another opportunity. It feels like that deck right now just has so many different options, so many different ways to get a fantastic advantage.
I mean, I said I've never won as Miracle Rogue, but I've never had an opening hand like that. I've never had the potential to make such a big Edwin and put that much pressure. And usually when I get to Space Shaman, they would then just drop some wolves, and I just be like, well, what can I do?
The interesting thing here is that the play that you had an indication of, and obviously I was a little bit too quick to jump the gun with, was the play that won in the game. You know, he won at turn 3 just by saying, okay, I'm going to slam the biggest Edwin ever.
Yeah.
And then hopefully it's going to carry me through. And that's, I generally find in those matchups that it seems to be, for me, the way that I win.
Yeah.
Is if I just slam a big Edwin and they don't have an answer to it, then I can just race them because I'm throwing, you know, that's a 3-turn lethal timer with that Edwin that he threw down there.
It was how calm and collected he was not to coin out that deadly poison early on, which I was quite surprised by. Well, I mean, I saw it late. When I saw the deadly poison come into hand, I was like, okay, yeah, so yeah, of course you deadly poison, you get rid of that Finley, and then I was like, oh wait, no, looking at the prep, and the fact that he got the Shadow Strike off the top as well, which allowed him to deal with the board even more, it was just, yeah, it was bad times for the Shaman.
But like we said, even if the Shadow Strike hadn't been drawn, it would have been prep sap, so that the Cipher always had that play in his mind going forward in that game, which is just, it just shows you how calculated Cipher is with these plays. The fact that he's one of the only players that you very rarely see him make any kind of reaction, even to bad, RNG or even to top decks. He just says, okay, it's fine, part of the game.
I think at this point he's just seen it all. Like, there's nothing that can phase him anymore. But especially in a scenario like this, where he's managing to slowly but surely find his advantage here, it's going to be pretty difficult to phase at this stage. And let's remember that Cipher is in a fantastic spot in the grand scheme of things as well, because he has come from the winner's bracket. Even if he loses this best of 7, Boar Control has to take him on once more in another best of 7 just to be able to take this victory. We are, let's remember, in our grand finals, and it's going to be Cipher playing this Tempo Warrior and Boar Control on his Beast Druid once more.
Yeah, Cipher just 2 wins away from being the UK champion, which is just crazy. And Boar Control's going to have to try and run this Druid again, and he's going to be facing up against the Tempo Warrior, which we have spoke about, which he made very famous. He kind of twisted. Tempo Warrior became very famous towards the end before the expansion of Old Gods, and Boar Control went, hey, okay, so that deck was good. Let's just add a few things. Blood to Wicker was obviously a card that no one really expected to make such a big impact, but it did. And now we see a lot of players bringing it to tournaments.
Absolutely, and honestly, people have tinkered with this deck back and forth. There is the Arch Thief Reform version that the Boar Control runs, and obviously Show had the popularity of that deck as well. Whereas the Variant Rin version is the version that we've seen more often from people, and that's the one that Cipher is running. So there's going to be a slight variation between the 2 types of Tempo Warriors. Obviously, Boar Control is being banned out, but there's that small variations between these ones. And Boar Control is the guy who's always looking for the next step. He originally had 2 Arathi Weaponsmiths. He took one out for a Corcoran Elite to try and win in the control matchups. So there's loads of iterations, but Cipher is running a little bit more of the classic version with Variant Rin.
It's funny because Boar Control obviously had it with Varian originally, and then
Yes.
Show put in the Rafarm, and then Boar Control was like, hey, that's terrible. And then he brought that to this tournament anyway, just completely going against his own word.
And I mean, that potentially could have just been strategy, you know, publicly kind of denounce that version of the deck and then bring it yourself. Nobody's going to really expect you to have that card if you've actively said how bad you think it is. So potentially a little bit of extra mind games coming out from Boar Control, and from hovering what it looked like was an innovate from Cipher's point of view. We know that Boar Control likes to go for those mind games, so...
Boar Control's hand does not look happy right now.
No, double Savage Roar is absolutely awful. And I was surprised he didn't go for the coin out and just getting one of those Stealth Panthers, but I guess instead he was worried perhaps about an Armor Smith.
It's not even a Stealth Panther.
No.
It's not even a Stealth Panther.
It's just a normal Panther.
You are right.
It's like a worse version of the Panther.
What a rubbish Panther.
Exactly, Munch. What a rubbish Panther. Double Armor Smith comes down here.
Blood to Ica there as well. You can just get rid of the 3-2 on the other side of the board and get a flip.
And you're setting up for a decent Battle Rage as well in the future. And Cipher, always the first to bring out the friendly emote during a competition. And Boar Control is not looking happy right now. You know, ideally he would have wanted Fandral or at least Markovic Charge to run with one of these Druid in the Flames, but it doesn't look like it's happening right now, and he holds his head in his hands as he knows this hand is not going to carry him very far, and this will be brutal. I mean, obviously, you lose one of the Armor Smiths if you try to go for the Whirlwind. I think it's probably the worst play. I think, in my opinion, just go for Corcoran and trade that 1/1 Armor Smith in. But if you want a huge Battle Rage, you have the tools for it in the future, and you could potentially use it next turn.
I think you just Corcoran and you use one of your Armor Smiths here, and then you can just set up for a big Whirlwind into Battle Rage next turn.
I think it's way overkill to Battle Rages, especially when you've already got board presence, you've got some nice answers in hand in terms of your Corcoran. Like, it seems like committing way too many resources just to get card draw at this stage. And
so just Corcoran, use your 1/4, trade into the 2/5, then you've got 2-3 damaged minions for next turn. You're obviously not damaged, your character isn't damaged, but he's thinking about Slam here.
It looks like that is going to be the decision. He gets to draw another card, and in fact just going to trade minions and then use the Battle Rage, and finds himself a Fiery War Axe, which will be potentially a big deal in this matchup, because, you know, Fiery War Axe is just one of those cards that can deal with so many threats, and especially like these Panthers and other such cards in this deck, it can be very easy to deal with. And as well, things like the Druid of the Claw, if you use that as a charge minion, there are so many effects that deal that 1 extra damage, and then Fiery War Axe can finish it off.
I guess you coin your Tiger or Druid of the Claw here. You save Corcoran, I suppose, in the event that you want to trade into the Druid of the Claw, but it doesn't feel nice to trade the Corcoran and both your Armor Smiths in.
I preferred Corcoran in his last play, but I guess he was playing around Swipe, perhaps?
Yeah, it does play further around Swipe at that point, but again, that is the Beast Druid attempting to catch up to you on board, and that's not where the Beast Druid wants to be because of how it works. You like to establish a very early board and then try and finish the game by having a board presence already, and then combo that with the Savage Roar. I guess it also plays around Wrath for card draw because it would have been a 4/1 Corcoran Elite on board.
I think the problem for Boar Control here as well is he's not only got to try and re-control the board, but he's also got to deal with these Armor Smiths as well, because the longer they're on the board, the more armor that Cipher's just going to gain up and make it harder for this aggressive Druid to kind of finish the game off.
It's fine to slam Harrison. I know that you've been trying to play around Swipe all game, but I don't really see many other fantastic plays here, so...
I think just playing Harrison there anyway, you know, it's on curve. Even if they do swipe,
they're off curve on Swipe.
It's not the end of the world that you lose Harrison anyway. And you do have other answers in your hand. One turn away at this point from Malkorok.
If you force them to swipe off curve, then I think that's fine, because they lost 1 mana in that situation in most senses, and going to use the Living Roots here just to deal with the Armor Smith before, I guess, trading into the Harrison, but all of this doesn't, you can see in Boar Control's face, he doesn't really know what the best play here.
I think he's considering wrathing in Living Roots and down this Harrison, perhaps. Either that, he's just going to leave it on board and say, look, okay, I'll let you trade. But no, it does look like he's going to use these spells to try and get rid of this minion and get some board presence once again. Because really, this is what this battle's all about, is just about tempo right now. And against a tempo warrior, I mean, you definitely need to keep that board.
So Corcoran actually has some value here. But also you could just Fiery War Axe, Acolyte of Pain and Whirlwind, which also seems pretty good.
Yeah, it certainly does. And you are going to take that 5 damage to face, but when you're on 30 with 9 armor, not really a major concern at this stage. And now, once more, Cipher is the one with the upper hand. He's got the minion on board, and he's got that Fiery War Axe out and ready.
There's a Mark of the Charge, finally, so we will see it come down.
Yeah, and that's going to be, oh, a nice draw as well. Means he can play that Raven Idol this turn. And really, with a Raven Idol, that's kind of a nice scenario to have it. You get to just play it as an extra little play to what you would have ended the turn on anyway, so you just get to find.
Oh, he goes for the minion, which is something we don't generally tend to see, but that's Knight of the Wild, I believe.
So its cost is reduced every time you play a beast,
Yeah.
I believe, which does synergize quite well with this deck, so I can understand the choice, but it's not the greatest minion in the world. But I mean, if he does draw more beasts, then it could come into play and it could be very valuable. It's basically just like having a thing for below for the Shaman.
So we might see Korkron actually used here to deal with this 4/7, or just sent all face, but I imagine you want to deal with the 4/7, so there you go. It'll leave Monkey on board, and you still have this Acolyte of Pain too, so it's not looking awful for Cipher. He obviously has Malarak and Gromash as, I guess, initial turns.
Yeah, Cypher's still feeling pretty comfortable in this one. Now, Fandral has been drawn, but I feel like you just don't want to play Fandral straight up like that. You know it's just going to end up going down, and you need to get the value, especially when you're kind of on the back foot from this Beast Druid deck. You have to get some value out of Fandral at this stage, or you will be in some serious trouble.
I think you just play Malkorok here and hope for a weapon that can...
Basically, you're hoping for
Based Gorehowl.
your based
Well,
Gorehowl.
no, but I mean, even just a 3-attack weapon would be fine. You can trade well in with the Monkey.
Ideal situation, I guess, would be Arcanite or
I was about to say that, yeah.
Gorehowl, because then you get the more efficient trade with your Acolyte.
I think that's always the ideal situation.
Yeah, I mean,
really.
look, anything above a 3-attack weapon is always the ideal situation. 3-attack weapon just gives you value. Anything below that, you're pretty unhappy with. But I think you're right. It is the play. We'll see what comes up.
It's going to be
Eagle Horn Bow. It's not awful.
Yeah, again, it's kind of just average, isn't it? It's not something you can complain about, but at the same time, not something you're.
I think it's
overly
fine.
about either.
You can use the Monkey to trade in with it. You keep board control and you keep that Druid on the back foot, which is important against this Beast Druid. That Fandral is still doing nothing, and both of those Savage Roars are just sat in the hand, looking very sad, and making board control look also very sad.
That's the problem with Savage Roar now, that if you don't have board control, it's like a dead card.
Okay, so we can get some value from this Fandral now.
Yeah.
Going to be able to get the board and gets his Panther out as well. But again, it's not ideal when you're looking at that Fandral. It's such a powerful spell if you are ahead on board. But
Battle Rage is nice here. It does prevent him from playing Grom as that defensive sort of removal tactic. However, it is drawing him 3 cards, and he does have those Bloodhoof Braves in hand too, and he can also use that Eagle Horn Bow to deal with it too.
I was going to say, you can still clear the board even without Grom. It's not an issue.
All the big boys are coming out
as
to
well.
play now, and this is what happens with Tempo Warrior when you get to this late game aspect. And
You don't even have to take face damage if you don't want. You could even just slam an Acolyte to finish off the Panther. Looks
Yeah,
like
but
he is opting to go for that.
Yeah, you can play Bloodhoof Brave instead of Cairn, but I like this as well, and actually that Eagle Horn Bow did prove to be pretty useful from the Malkorok, so he's happy. He's also not particularly weak to swipe in this scenario either, and I think this is going to have to be Druid of the Claw and Mark of Discharge, which is pretty decent.
it's decent, but it's... okay, Swipe can do things. You can clear that Malkorok for free if you wanted to. Hero Power maybe down the Cairn? Or he's just... Okay, he's going to Hero Power the Malkorok instead.
So we're going to see Slam here for
So
sure.
it seems like his game plan now is... Oh, very enough the top.
So his game plan, I think, at this point is...
Saving my spell power. for
Next
face.
turn I've got double Savage Roar and Swipe, and if he doesn't clear it, then I'm okay. But, you know, this is going to get cleared every single day of the week, and I imagine he just trades in Cairn, slams Ragnaros. Execute's pretty good, though, to be fair.
Executes, yeah, that's a perfectly fine play too. And realistically, from the point of view of the Warrior, I actually like playing the Bloodhoof here because you're
yeah.
playing around that Savage Roar.
I think you
you
have
know
to.
that the win condition right now is going to be just trying to find face damage, so playing that double taunt is always going to feel great.
But what are you afraid of for 13 damage from the Druid without a minion on board? If you're going to trade Cairn into that anyway, where are you worried?
Yeah, but I think it's just the safer play in
Yeah,
general. It's
yeah,
not
I
like
know.
you lose anything from not playing.
I completely agree with you. I'm just sort of questioning it in some senses.
There we go. The Wrath going to be used just for some card draw.
Think
I mean, this is such a painful situation for the Druid because Swipe doesn't even do anything. Like, you can't really achieve much with Swipe. You even give them an extra card draw.
I think Ball Control knew that he was in dead ends, because if you were realistically wanting to go for card draw, you probably would have done it on the Cairn. Because if you were going to use a Wrath for 1, you're not going to use it on Bloodhoof Brave and give it 3 attack if you were really seriously thinking you had an out here. In this situation, Ball Control probably thinks, okay, I don't know how much I can achieve.
Cypher's very quick to drop those well blades. It's just when it gets to that point, just before rope, when you're really thinking about a turn, if someone does drop an emote, it just can throw that thought process all over the place. As Cipher is going to go 3-1 up and be 1 game away from being the UK Hearthstone Premiership champion.
I mean, right now, looking at their previous games, Cipher beat Ball Control 4-1. He's looking right at doing the exact same thing in this series right now. I mean, talk to me about that series, because so far the Beast Druid really, it's something that Cipher kind of denounced when we saw them backstage talking about the decks, and so far he seems to be right about the situation.
I mean, Cipher has been the sort of, I guess, the favourite to win, but he's also been the guy that I think most people have been like, oh, I hope the underdog upsets him kind of thing, because he's been very quick to confidently say, I'm going to win, that Beast Druid deck is terrible, I'm going to absolutely farm it, but the way it's going, he is just farming that Beast Druid deck. It is getting rolled by Cipher's lineup at this point in time. And I think, you know, Ball Control realizes that I have to win with it. If I don't win with it now, that's probably why he's queuing it up consistently. If I don't win with it now, then I'm never going to win with it. We saw it do well against the Freeze Mage of Mysterious, so maybe in this situation he says, okay, I know that there is just a Freeze Mage left for Cipher. If I'm going to win with the Beast Druid, it's going to be now.
I mean,
so
3 aggressive decks left for Ball Control against the Freeze Mage. It's very possible to do the complete flip here and turn this one around to be 4-3. Usually you'd say Mage is better against Zoolock, but we've seen it 2-3 times this tournament where Zoolock
3 times.
has won against Freeze Mage.
2 of which were Ball Control himself, and both of which were against Mysterious. Interestingly enough, I think the point that Soto made is that the Dark Scientist really has hurt that matchup more than we would like. But the real reason we're seeing Freeze Mage lose to Zoo at this point in time is that there's no Doomsayers in the early hands here. So you're just allowing Zoo to build a board and not punishing them for it.
I do think it's a shame that we haven't seen this Druid perform well, because it is a really good deck when it does get those early cards. So it is a shame that it has been completely...
Well, according to Cipher, not.
Well, no, but it's been completely kind of stomped in this series. But Ball Control will queue up his Face Shaman against this Freeze Mage deck. He says, look, I can hedge my bets that I can just put as much damage into your face before you can get out your Alexstrasas, get out your Freezes. And this is going to be an interesting next set of games, actually. But Cypher's going to be feeling confident that he can get 1 win from these 3.
So Cipher thinking about whether to keep Arcane Intellect in this scenario. Now, I think in every other matchup, you keep Arcane Intellect as the Freeze Mage because it's just such a powerful draw tool. But he realistically wants something that's going to contest the early board. He wants any kind of early removal. Loot Hoarder is pretty good. But basically, anything that he can do to just restrict that board presence of the Phase Shaman. That's kind of what he's looking at in this scenario.
Certainly is. And that Loot Hoarder is going to be a nice early play, but unfortunately not an ideal hand really with the Pyroblast there, and also the Ice Block. While you do want the Ice Block at an early stage just so you have it, well, there's the early Doomsay you were talking about here. I think I prefer playing... I was going to say there's an argument really to play the Loot Hoarder first and then go into Doomsay turn 2, because it's still unlikely they have an answer.
There is, because we can see it, and I was going to say the same thing, but then you're worried about a Tunnel Trog into like a Lightning Bolt, into a Rock Biter, and it just seems safer to play it now and get rid of any minions.
What my issue is if he played Totem God on that turn, then traded into the Loot Hoarder with the Argent Squire, then had Rockbiter weapon the following turn, that Doomsayer would have done nothing. So it was safer to play the Doomsayer that turn and stop any potential totem golem coming down. And it really restricts that early tempo, or at least early board presence of the Face Shaman.
It certainly does. Well, Loot Hoarder still on board here. Second ice block being drawn, which isn't really ideal for Cipher. Just going to trade and get that card draw. Just find Alex Strauss there. And we'll be able to finish off the Tunnel Trog with a ping. So pretty self-explanatory turn from Cipher, to be honest. You don't need to waste the mana using the ice block this early on, just because, you know, you're far from being threatened unlethal at this stage.
I think having both ice blocks in hand is actually really important in this matchup, as well as having Alex Straza and the Pyroblast. I mean, all the tools are kind of there. He just now needs these delaying factors. He needs the draw mechanics to just survive this game. That 7/7 obviously is going to be a bit of a problem right now, and he hasn't got the mana to deal with it efficiently right.
You can deal with
Ping
it
it
over
this turn.
turns.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Ping
Ping
it
it this turn, then Fireball next turn. So, yeah, I mean, it's not an ideal scenario because you are going to take 7 damage to the face, but at least you do have an answer.
Well, potentially could be taking even more, and Boar Control may even just equip, he can't equip the Doom Hammer yet because of Overload, but even Flame Tongue Totem, that'll put 9 damage into face.
Yeah, he's starting to ramp up the pressure here onto Cipher.
And Lava Burst in hand as well. So the tools are in the hand of both players at the moment. I think the key thing is going to be things like Blizzard and maybe perhaps a Frost Nova.
Frost Nova's pretty good here. You don't even need, you don't even need to Fireball at this point, because Frost Nova is a-okay. But look at the burst that Boar Control has got in hand right now. He has got Doomsayer and also Rockbiter. I don't believe he's overloaded the following turn, so that is just flat 10 damage that he could put down.
Do you... I think you Frost Nova, run the Novice Engineer into the 7/6 and maybe even just ping the 7/6 as well, so you set yourself up for... Oh, no, wait. I was going to say you're setting yourself up for a Flame Strike, but I suppose the Blizzard does the same job next turn, so
I would say
you don't even need to do that, but...
It would have been worth maybe looking to try and get some damage in onto the Flame Tongue Totem, look to be able to ping it on a future turn, but I suppose next turn you do have to Blizzard anyway, so...
I mean, to be honest, given the situation, Boar Control's probably going to win in 2 turns, 3 turns anyway.
Yeah, it's certainly looking pretty good for him at this stage. And actually just going to rock bite to get that 10 damage down straight away. Has the Lava Burst in hand as well, and Boar Control...
He wins next
well
turn,
on
right?
the way to victory.
Unless he draws a Frost Nova, he wins next turn, because Cipher at this point can't Blizzard and Ice Block.
But he can Ice Block,
Well, yeah,
which will stop him from winning for now.
Yeah, but that's the I don't lose this turn play, not the I win the game play.
Yeah, but at this stage, is there an I win the game play? I think that's
No.
kind of delaying to find an I win the game play. And
If you lose your Ice Block now, you're 3 turns away from Alex Strazi. You've only got 2 Ice Blocks in hand. There isn't an I win the game play. You don't have the time to start bursting.
So, I mean, so you could Ice Block now, you survive, then you can... No, I'm clutching at straws.
So,
I'm
okay,
trying
right.
to find a way here,
Ice
but-
Block Frostbolt face, Ice Block, I guess, Fireball face.
He has gone for the Blizzard, though.
Yeah, and this is over now then.
Which means Boar Control is going to fight back in this series. Get another win on the board and get closer to that second best of 7 series that we will see if Boar Control does manage to win this.
now we have it, despite both Ice Blocks in the hand of Cipher, that one is going to go the way of Boar Control, so looking to stay in this series. Cipher still just 1 win away from total victory here and taking our championship, but Boar Control is definitely not going down without a fight, and across the course of our finals, this is the most wins the Boar Control's managed to get against Cipher.
If there was a deck to beat the Freeze Mage outright, it was that Face Shaman deck. It has probably the best chances of success. Zoo does pretty good, obviously.
Well,
Zoo does pretty good in this tournament, obviously. I'll rephrase that. Generally speaking, Zoo doesn't have the best matchup in the world. And then the Beast Druid, we saw him have success with it, but I think if any of them are going to be weakest to the Freeze Mage, it probably is going to be that Beast Druid. It is really reliant on you just like going crazy in the freeze, having absolutely no freeze in hand. And if you were to hedge your bets over the next 2 games at a Freeze Mage at least coming out with one of the wins, you would probably, if you were betting, say that I would put my money behind the Freeze Mage picking up a win. But strange things have happened, and Boar Control currently holds a 100% Zoo to Freeze Mage win ratio, so, well, you know, we can't always go everything with the general statistics. Sometimes the luck is just with you.
Yeah, absolutely, that can be the case, but The decks remaining now for Boar Control are still that Druid, along with his Zoo, Warlock and Cipher, obviously, on that Freeze Mage. Now, I'm curious to see what Boar Control does end up rolling with here, whether he decides to go with that Druid once more, try and get the win out of the way, or whether he opts to go with kind of that Zoolock that we just talked about, kind of maybe being slightly favourable. At least so far in this tournament, it's felt that way.
I think you queue with the Warlock just because you have had success with it. You want to tie up the series and then just use that Druid as like a last stand, and it just seems a shame that he's brought this Druid and it really hasn't shown the full potential. But Cipher will be very confident against the Druid, and it does look like Boar Control is actually going to queue that one up. But if it does get the start that it can get, it definitely can win this game.
Yeah. You think if he'd brought Rogue, Boar Control would be in a really, really good spot. You know, the Rogue seems to have had really good success over this tournament. But he went for the Beast Druid, and I guess he went for the Beast Druid to try and play into the Rogue in most scenarios, because the Beast Druid generally, I suppose, given the right starts, will have a good success rate versus Rogue. So this is a kind of one of those conquest tactics that's like, you know, I'm specifically targeting a certain deck. And Gaskin threw his hands up in the air here when he saw Boar Control's opening hand, as does Boar Control, because this is not looking good for him right now.
I love this Beast Druid deck. I've personally played it on ladder a lot, and it's just, it can be so horrendous if you draw like that. Look at that start. That is absolutely horrendous. Whereas on the other hand, Cipher's got his Loot Hoarders. He had Doomhammers last turn.
It's not forgiving. That's the problem with the Beast Druid deck. It is not forgiving. There is no, I guess in some scenarios, comeback mechanics. And you think, you know, he has to Wrath for 1 here because he needs to cycle at this point.
So going to be able to get rid of the Loot Hoarder, but Arcane Intellect is here for Cipher, so he's happy to spend his third turn just drawing more cards.
And turn 4 setup as well.
Turn 4 as well, with the double gnomes right there.
Well, Innovate's not awful here. Absolutely not awful. It gives him some ways to play around things.
Yeah, Innovate is always a good card to have in your hand. Forgotten Torch here. A pretty decent draw for Cipher, in all honesty. Could use that just to clear away this Panther, cycle the Roaring Torch into your deck to use later on to try and finish off Boar Control.
I like Loot Hoarder into Frostbolt. Just removing that kind of, that 3/2 minion and having something on the board as well just seems like better for me. Just because that if you have something on the board, it can argue with whatever this Druid might play. Okay, it might be something of more health than two of the attack, but then you have got spells to kind of help out that Loot Hoarder as well. And of course, it's more card draw.
I wouldn't have minded innovating out the Stranglethorn Tiger last turn, because it's not turn 5 yet. There's no coin for Cipher, so you know, you're not expecting like a Frostnova Doomsayer on a single Stranglethorn Tiger. But you know, I like the play that you suggested there. You already have that Frostbolt in hand. You've got a lot of burn to sit with right now with the Forgotten Torch as well, and you haven't yet received any damage to face at turn 4. So as the Freeze Mage, you are feeling pretty healthy in this situation. Now, Boar is probably going to coin out a 5-drop here. There's literally no other play. It's just about which 5-drop he chooses to go with.
I think the Tiger is better, in my opinion, just because it is less vulnerable to those spells that are in the hand of a Freeze Mage. I think he's keeping the Innovate for the hope of getting Fandral and making a really impactful play.
Or just throwing down Rag. Maybe he's thinking, if I kept the coin next turn, I can turn 5 Rag, which could be influential. But, you know, now I think he's probably keeping that for turn 6 Ragnaros at this point. And, you know, can't deal with this Stranglethorn Tiger. You need to start applying pressure in some way, and maybe giving 1 extra turn to the Freeze Mage isn't good enough. But I mean, Cipher's had all of his cycle at this point in time, and he gets another one off the top. So after this Arcane Intellect, Cipher's only going to be drawing into things that he really wants. So he's going to be pretty happy.
And it's turn 5, and he's still not taken any damage from the Beast Druid as well. And typically the Beast Druid is meant to be aggressive, but as we've seen time and time again, Boar Control just hasn't had the start that he would have liked. He has got the option now to just swipe face and get rid of both of these minions, which I think is perfectly fine. He could coin out, he could innovate out the Druid of the Saber, but personally I'd like to keep the Innovate.
Yeah, especially when you're not really getting full value out of the Innovate as well. The Emperor. Cipher is living the Freeze Mage dream right now, gets the turn 6 Emperor, gets an incredible amount of value on that as well. Look at Boar Control's face, he's not happy about that situation, but here we go. The coin Ragnaros is going to be the call, just praying for a way back into this game at this stage. Does get 8 damage to base, and actually, that makes Cipher have to start to worry a little bit about protecting himself.
Yeah, he needs to start thinking about Ice Block ASAP. He hasn't yet got that Alexstrasza, not quite, you know, obviously at turn 9 at this point. He could...
So you Thanos into Fireball
yeah,
and then
Thanos
ping.
Fireball ping.
You
right.
have to remove this Ragnaros.
Yeah.
Ragnaros is just too good against Freeze Mage. It's too much of a threat. And Cipher has the tools, so he just gets rid of it, and obviously can play the 1-mana Novice Engineer as well. Into another Frost Nova, so he's got Frost Nova, Doomsayer to follow up if he does feel threatened next turn. And he's got the Ice Block in hand. It's just...
There's a lot of burn. There's a lot of burn here for Cipher. He's just waiting for that Alexstrasza.
I'm just thinking with these Savage Roars in hand,
Yeah, there is the
he
potential.
just gonna... Yeah, he's just gonna hit face. He's just gonna jam everything into face now and say, look, I've got damage in hand. He's got that Druid of the Claw, which can charge, plus Savage Roars, but
So
the Ice Block and the Ice Barrier is going to be painful.
how much damage can you do here? You've got 7 for 11, 15?
I mean, right now for Cipher, you could even just Flame Strike, throw out Ice Block. That's a perfectly comfortable turn.
Yeah.
You clear the board,
What to do? What to do?
and you're protected in case he does have that lethal in hand, which...
I think that Ice Barrier is almost more important than the Ice Block right now because, yes, okay, the Ice Block would just delay the inevitable, but the Ice Barrier is just going to put him out of range of popping that Ice Block, and he doesn't have the second one to replace it.
And does find a way to clear the board without having to use that Flame Strike as well, which could be important later on if there does end up with more minions on the board. Innovate?
Not great
Would
right now.
be-
There's nothing you're thinking about innovating,
No.
but I suppose you could Druid of the Claw charge once more, but you probably just want to obviously start applying as much threat as possible. Maybe combo the Druid of the Claw with those Savage Roars. There's the Ice Barrier popping. Ball control not feeling too confident at this point.
12 health remaining here for Cipher, which doesn't sound like a lot, but actually it feels like a mountain to climb for Boar control at this stage. Does have the double Savage Roar, but struggling to keep a minion on the board to use those with.
It does mean he's got 13 burst from hand if he were to have 10 damage, 12 if he wasn't to use his hero power, so there is potential of
What to do?
popping the Ice Block next turn, but the Frost Nova will probably have something to say about that.
Do you just Frostbolt this Savage Combatant? You've used a lot of your burn already to deal with things. I guess you're waiting at this point in time to draw your Alexstrasza, or just draw into some cheaper burn in the form of, you know, Roaring Torch, or potentially one of your Ice Lances. The issue if you use this Frostbolt is that you haven't got anything to combo
I
with
think
your
Flame
Ice
Strike is
Lances.
fine.
Pardon?
I think Flame Strike is completely
Yeah, Flame
fine
Strike
here.
is fine. When else are you going to use it at this point in time? I suppose you're kind of worried about a potential giant board with the Violet Teacher.
Cyclone Cold is going to be the call, possibly a ping with a trade.
He's going to go for the card draw. Okay.
You're never going to complain about playing a Blizzard against an aggressive deck like this. So there are still a decent amount of answers in the hand of Cipher for damage that could come over a couple of turns. However, it's this instant damage that's going to come out from Boar control that
You can get the
you
pop
still
here, can't
worry
you?
about. Yeah, I believe so.
No, he can't pop it this turn
Yeah.
because
That's,
You can.
Oh, yeah, you can.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But he leaves him at 4 health, so it doesn't make it as easy. You're going to have to really rely on a swipe to be the killing blow for you at this point in time.
yeah, right now, Boar control living on a prayer, quite literally searching for a swipe.
Can Boar Control's belief in his deck bring him through once more? We've seen him bring some of those cards from the top, which unfortunately, you know, have spelt his winning deal. So hopefully he can do it again with a swipe. You never know. There's no Ice Block in hand for Cipher, and it doesn't look like he's got a clear path to searching for lethal at this point in time. Really would have liked that Alexstrasza a long time ago.
Yeah, certainly would have, but does have a couple of answers. Flame Strike looks like the one he is going to be using on this turn just to clear away this Panther. Still has 4 mana to play with, but
I think you may have to use a Frostbolt to freeze face here, just to stop any extra damage coming in, but I mean, swipe off the top. It's going to win the game.
Just seen 2
Maybe
Savage.
drop the Doomsayer as well, just in case
Yeah.
it does drop something like a Strength of Tiger, which we can obviously see.
I guess the Frostbolt to face would stop potential another Savage Combatant and Living Roots.
So off the top for ball control is
Power of the
Wild,
Wild.
which is going to do absolutely zilch. And means he's just going to have to Hero Power hit face, take Cipher down to 3, and pass the turn.
How many Living Roots have we seen from Ball Control already? I don't believe we've seen 2, so now he's got 2 outs in the form of Living Roots and Hero Power, and oh, this is not looking particularly fantastic, and he's going to have to go for that Frostbolt to face at this point in time.
Yeah, just to stay in the game. I mean, at this point, are you considering just using the Pyroblast just in this turn? Like, how long can you just wait for Alexstrasza at this stage?
I would probably just use the Doomsayer Fireball.
How many cards has Cipher even got left now? Oh, thanks. 8.
Cheers, Cipher. He's wondering. He's got 1 Roaring Torch in there. I think he's got 1 Forgotten Torch. He's got 2 Ice Lances, I believe.
He's got Ice Barrier. He's also got.
He's got another Ice Block and an Ice Barrier. So actually, a lot of the cards that he draws now will have some serious use. He's just wondering how many cards he has to draw to get lethal at this point. And again, it's just a position of who's going to draw the better card from the top of their deck. Yeah,
So
I prefer this. I think he's saying if he draws Forgotten Torch next turn, then he can use, if he uses Roaring Torch next turn, he can use Pyroblast to finish the game. But obviously ooh, that's pretty good for Ball Control.
Well, it's more card draw. It's definitely giving him an option of another route. I saw a
gets
cheer
it,
as
there
he
we
gets
go.
swipe. And it will tie this series up 3-3. Ball Control is very much alive in this series now.
And I don't even know what to say. Ball Control literally hanging on by the skin of his teeth. But Cipher, it felt like he had such a good start. You know, he had both of his secrets early on, but he wasn't able to find a second Ice Block. And crucially, never found that Alexstrasza, never found an actual way to kill his opponent.
It was that 12 burst damage from the Druid of the Claw into Savage Roar that just... that was like the Druid we used to see with the Force of Nature, just having that burst damage, which was why the old Druid used to be so good against Freeze Mage. And I'm glad for Ball Control that his Druid did get a win on the board, to be honest.
Yeah, interestingly enough, that he literally lived the Freeze Mage dream until he found that Alexstrasza was in the bottom 8 cards of his deck, and he was never going to find it very easily. So now Cipher struggling with this Freeze Mage, but he's going into the Zoolock matchup. Now, I want to say that, you know, Cipher has the slight edge going in here, but if this weekend has told us anything, it's that he doesn't.
This is our opportunity, I suppose, to settle the debate of what is the deck that wins it, a Zoolock or Freeze Mage. I suppose we're going to find out, as those are going to be the last 2 decks for these guys. And let's remember, if Cipher can win this game, he is our champion. He will walk away with our trophy and the prize money and the title of the best Hearthstone player in the UK. But Ball Control, he's still fighting for tournament life at this stage. If he wins this game, he has to essentially re-challenge Cipher to another best of 7. Cipher did come from our winner's bracket, meaning he has that weighted advantage. So Ball Control, even though he's 1 game away from winning this series, still has a long way to go if he wants to win the whole tournament. But here we go, the Zoolock versus Freeze Mage matchup begins. And
It looks like there's finally a little bit of luck in Ball Control's favor as he does get the Flame Imp in his original mulligan. Always gets off a Flame Imp turn 1.
Cone of Cold isn't bad early on here for Cipher, especially
It's great
versus the
against
Zoolock.
Yeah. Oh!
Ooh.
All the things.
Again, I don't know, double Flame Imp, it seems great, but...
I mean, Warlock, they tap themselves into Freeze Mage range of damage anyway, but I guess you just want to get as much power on board as early as possible. Hey, I'm not going to argue with how Ball Control plays the game. He's already beat Freeze Mage twice today.
So this is going to be a really nice Void Walker here for Ball Control. It stops that Flame Imp going down to the trade and ping. Another one comes through, and there is the Void Walker, and Cipher's going to be...
that is a scary board at the end of turn 2, isn't it? 7 damage available on board from Ball Control now. And there's no direct answer from Cipher. He was looking at trading the Gnome plus the ping into one of those imps, but the Void Walker going to just ruin his day.
You can put 9 damage into this Freeze Mage next turn, which is pretty scary as the Freeze Mage, especially as there's no real answer for the whole board. He can perhaps Forgotten Torch, one of the things. Instead, he does play Dark Shield Councilman, just more power on the board. He is going to trade this Novice Engineer out.
Yeah, this is This is a really nice situation when you're playing Zoo as well, because now you have multiple threats. Cipher has to decide whether he wants to deal with the threat of the Councilman that will build up, or whether he wants to remove those Flame Imps.
I think you forgot and torch the Flame Imp on the left, and then you've got a particularly nice looking Cone of Cold coming up the turn afterwards. And obviously, you need to remove one of them. So yeah, I think this is the play, and then obviously Cone of Cold deals with the other one next turn, but this is not looking particularly fun for Cipher at this point in time. He really needs to start stalling
Knife
ASAP.
Trigger as well, just even more damage. That's like almost, what, 10, 11 damage this turn.
Let's just remember for a second that Cipher was 3-1 up in this series. Cipher was well on the way to his victory, but is really struggling to find a win with this Frost Mage. No secrets to be seen. Has his Cone of Cold. That's about... Well, that's pretty much the only play you can make
Even if
this
he Cone
turn,
of Colds now, this Gormok gets value as well, because there's going to be 4 minions on board. And, this is just looking really ugly for Cipher and looking fantastic for
He's got lethal next turn. If yeah, this is lethal, right? Oh no,
No,
he's done it right. Sorry, yeah, he did it right. I thought he was aiming it at the middle one, but now he doesn't.
So what did he just pick up off the top there? I didn't see.
He got an Abusive Sergeant, so that's going to be 4 more damage. That's 10 damage.
Hey, well, with the Abusive Sergeant
the
off the
Knife
top,
Juggler,
that is lethal.
Yeah.
And we are going to see Boar Control somehow manages to reverse sweep this series from 3-1 to 4-3. Boar Control is pushing us to a final best of 7.
Okay, so I was technically right, saved by the Abusive Sergeant. I was saved by the Abusive Sergeant in that scenario, but yeah, if he hadn't frozen the Darkshire Councilman, he would have had lethal anyway, but obviously you freeze the Darkshire Councilman every day of the week, so I was just thinking in the clouds at that point. But still, the same turn lethal happened for Boar Control anyway, and the Abusive Sergeant comes through with Gormok the Impaler. And it seems to be settling the debate quite nicely for us, because Zulok has a 100% win ratio versus Freeze Mage.
This was my worry about bringing Freeze Mage to this tournament. I don't like it. I don't like this new Freeze Mage, and I really think it sucks in this format. I don't think it's as strong as it used to be. And, well, Cipher got punished, and now Boar Control's back into this. He's going to be feeling very good about himself, and he now just needs to win another best of 7, and he will go and be our champion.
Yeah, he certainly does, and I mean, fantastic play from Boar Control. When he was 3-1 down, I'd all but counted him out. I felt like Cipher was just so far ahead, it was going to be so difficult for him to get back in, but time and time again, Cipher just hasn't been able to find his win conditions on that Freeze Mage, and it's meant that Boar Control has found his way back into this series. Now, I just want to get your kind of final thoughts on that series, because we're essentially going to see a rematch coming up between these two players.
I said when he was 3-1 down, he's got three aggressive decks left. There is plenty of potential for him to come back into this series. The aggro won, the Freeze Mage just couldn't get the stall mechanics out. It had the draw, but it just lacked that end game. It didn't have the Alexstraszas, and yeah, just a fantastic feeling.
When we looked at the Freeze Mage versus the lineup that Boar Control had left, I said that all 3 of those decks can beat Freeze Mage, and we've seen them beat Freeze Mage in the past. We said that the Beast Druid was probably the one that was going to struggle the most, and you saw there that it was the deck that literally had the hardest time dealing with the Freeze Mage. But he got all 3 wins. He absolutely swept Cipher's Freeze Mage off the board. And honestly, even despite a fantastic start in that Beast Druid matchup for Cipher, Boar Control comes back with a very deserved win and pushes it to a best of 7 grand final. Will clean stakes end of the tournament here.
And importantly as well, across this tournament, it's essentially a best of 3 of best of 7s between these two players, each of them having won one so far. Cipher with a 4-1 in earlier on, now it's a 4-3 to Boar Control. We'll see who's going to be able to